In the void, no one can hear you scream. But in this case, that might be the only way to survive. The void was vast, endless, and eerily silent. Captain Elias Voss sat in the command chair of the Ironclad, humanity's premier deep space warship. The hum of the ship's reactor was the only sound filling the bridge as his crew worked diligently around him. They had been patrolling the uncharted edges of Exira-controlled space when the distress signal came through. "Commander Hale," Elias called out, his sharp voice cutting through the quiet tension. "What do we have?" Lieutenant Commander Evelyn Hale, his second in command, analyzed the signal. Her brow furrowed as she turned back to Elias. "It's a Exira vessel, sir. Classified as a dreadnought." "But," she hesitated, "the signal is fragmented, garbled. I can't make out what they're saying." Elias leaned forward. The Exira were humanity's sworn enemies, cold, calculating, ruthless. They did not send distress signals. They either won their battles or died fighting. Something was off. "Lieutenant Varon, can you clean up the signal?" Elias asked, directing the request to their comms officer. A few moments passed before a heavily distorted voice crackled through the speakers. It was broken, desperate. "Help, shadows. Can't escape. We're not alone. Don't. Come closer." The message ended abruptly. A deep, uneasy silence filled the bridge. Elias exchanged a look with Evelyn. "Prepare a boarding team. We need to find out what happened." The Ironclad docked with the derelict Exira vessel. Its massive hull was scarred with deep gashes, as if something had torn through its reinforced plating. No signs of life. No movement. Elias, Evelyn, and a squad of heavily armed Marines entered through the airlock, their weapons at the ready. The ship was deathly silent, save for the occasional flicker of failing emergency lights. "Stay sharp," Elias whispered. They advanced through the corridors, the air thick with an unnatural stillness. Then they found the first body. It was a Exira warrior, its chitinous exoskeleton torn open from within. Its mandibles were frozen in a twisted scream. Something had killed it, but not in any way they had ever seen before. Then came another. And another. "What the hell did this?" one of the Marines muttered. Elias knelt beside a corpse, noting the blackened veins running across its body. It wasn't just death. It was something worse. "Captain," Evelyn called from a console up ahead. "You need to see this." A holographic log flickered to life, displaying the last recorded message from the Exira captain. His eyes were wild with fear, something unheard of for their species. "We found something, an anomaly it attached to our ship. It spreads. It infects. Don't let it." The message ended in static. Then the ship breathed. A deep, guttural sound reverberated through the walls. The lights flickered. The Marines snapped into formation, weapons aimed in all directions. "Contact," a Marine shouted. Something moved in the darkness. Shapes, shifting, skittering. Not Zira. Not human. Something worse. The creatures emerged twisted, nightmarish amalgamations of flesh and exoskeleton. Zira bodies reanimated by a writhing black infection. Their mandibles split open, revealing tendrils of oily darkness reaching hungrily toward the humans. "Fire," Elias commanded. Gunfire erupted, tearing through the infected creatures. But as soon as they fell, they began to reassemble, flesh knitting back together at an unnatural speed. "Fall back," Evelyn ordered. "We need to move now." They sprinted down the corridor, but the infection was spreading. The walls pulsed, veins of darkness creeping along the metal, consuming everything in its path. "We have to sever the docking clamps," Elias said. "If this thing spreads to the Ironclad, we're done." Evelyn nodded. "Bridge controls should be ahead." The team fought their way to the command center, cutting down wave after wave of infected Zira. Elias accessed the ship's core, overriding the safety locks. But then the screen changed.
A reflection. His own face, but wrong, his skin darkening, veins turning black. His hands trembled. His voice caught in his throat. Evelyn grabbed him. Captain, you're infected. Elias clenched his fists. His vision swam. He could feel the thing inside him, whispering, calling. But he wasn't going to let it win. Blow the ship, he gritted out. Evelyn hesitated, but then nodded, setting the reactor to overload. They sprinted back to the airlock, firing at the abominations chasing them. As they reached the ironclad, the doors sealed behind them. Evelyn smashed the emergency release, detaching the docking clamps just as the Xera dreadnought erupted into a massive explosion. The shockwave sent them tumbling, alarms blaring as the ironclad righted itself. Elias collapsed, breathing heavily. His veins still tingled, but the infection, it was gone. Or so he hoped. Later, in the medical bay, Evelyn sat beside Elias as the ship's AI ran scans on him. "You good?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Elias exhaled. "I think so." The AI scan results appeared. No trace of infection. At least, nothing visible. But as Elias looked into the mirror for just a split second, the infection was still there, waiting. And in the void, nothing ever truly dies.